Sometimes I'm cracking the whip. Other times I'm trying to hold a shield in front of them. But it all starts again with, I believe, fast, rapid communication, like the daily check-in. It's like my favorite meeting, 15 minutes, 8 of us. If it takes 10 minutes, it's gone very long, but we all leave that meeting knowing what's up today. What did I forget? What might be missing? What priority changed? So that's been a huge help.
Hey, thank you, Ian, for coming along and joining us on our podcast. Super excited to have you on and talk to you a little bit about shifting from being inside a private equity company and then rolling into being a chief of staff at Panapto. So thanks heaps for giving up some time, especially it's evening your time, and jumping on and chatting to us.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm excited to see you guys again. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Tell us a little bit about your background. Kick it off. What got you into tech in the first place and led you towards joining private equity?
Happy to. I went to Boston University. I studied business, finance, and operations. And I got a job out of college at a big bank, pretty boring job. And that was kind of like the wake up call of, man, this sucks. This is a huge company, right? It was one where I wasn't really challenged. And after a year, I stuck it out for a year. And I think around like day 370, I resigned. And I came back and I started a small company. And that was awesome. A high-end chef knife company. And over those 9-10 months, I got a lot more perspective on really what I wanted to do and did a lot more actual research and learning. I hadn't done that when I went for my first job. And as I learned more, I want to be challenged every day. I want to be doing something that's external facing, fast paced, different challenges, projects, all that good stuff. And it led me down this path of alternative asset management. And as it just so happens, there was this analyst development program that opened up, right time, right place, that at the time, a little firm called K1 Capital, now known as K1 Investment Management. And it really just checked all the boxes. Now, as it relates to your other part of software and technology, I think all of us say we grew up in that generation where it was interesting. I worked at this big bank and the software sucked and it was old. And I think as I learned more about K1, it's, whoa, I can work on the investment side. I can be challenged. And we spend all day, every day thinking about software and technology and how it can better the business life. It really just all came together at the right time, right place. So it's been quite the journey since then.
So significantly smarter than me. I did law for 10 years before I realized that I was bored every day and I wanted to do something else. So it took me a little bit longer to work out than you.
Yeah.
And then you go on that journey. We obviously spent time with you when you were at K1. We spent time with a lot of people. It's an awesome place to work and an awesome bunch of people, great place to interact with a software company. So what makes you then take next jump where you go to a software company?
Good question. My background at K1 is they had this investment side of the house and they had that operation side of the house, right? I got to come up, K1 went through their own startup, like on that operations team. When I joined, there wasn't an operations arm and all this. And so over the years, getting to build a no operations team to a operations team, no, we're adding operation consultants, oh, we're going functional, fantastic experience. And I learned all these bits and pieces of sales, customer success, M&A, integrations, marketing. It was one of the dangerous inch deep, mile wide. And as we continued to progress, right, and I meet Ricky, I meet Sean, I meet others from these companies, you guys are really masters of your functional universes. And as I learned more and talked to mentors, knew that at a certain point, I need to actually go put my butt in seat as an operator. Even if it means one day going back to the PE side, I need to actually get that real world experience. And so as we started thinking about, okay, where would it be? My strength and background is M&A, it's integrations, but it's also the fact that I have this kind of really round, robust experience across the board. Chief of staff really started to make the most sense. And that's why, as I was looking across the portfolio, chief of staff is the one that made the most sense off the bat.
It's super powerful, right? Like where we are now in spending a huge amount of time with small software companies that are in that sort of 1 to 5 million ARR space. It's a huge drive behind why we're doing this podcast to help them see sort of stuff. The advantage we have is we're operators, right? We've been operators for 10 plus years, built stuff in multiple places. And I think for you coming into this, you've got a huge amount of skill set you had from private equity days, and you'll pick up the whole other side of that skill set. And that's the bit we're trying to learn now, the private equity side. You'll pick up that operator side, which is going to make you super valuable if you ever decide to go back, right? Because you've been there, you've done it, you've actually been in that seat.
So I'm coming up on, it'll be a year, October 1st. And it's been such a wild ride in like a great way learning. I told people 1 weekend, just the deeper understanding and appreciation for just what goes on the day to day. And like every day is still a learning experience, which is just awesome. That is the biggest challenge and the biggest reward of being button seat operator versus on the investment side. It's fantastic. That was a great rush and challenge as well, but it's just different. You can't understand day to day what's happening the way you do when you're in a seat.
You're a man who likes a challenge, newborn baby, new job, all in the same time frame.
So, mate, being on this side of the fence, what's been the biggest takeaway? You've been there for a year, you said. What was it that you saw on a piece of paper being on the other side? And what have you seen being as the operator? What are the biggest challenges you had to overcome?
It's funny that you say seeing it on a piece of paper. That's the biggest difference in a way is when you're on the investment side, like you see what shows up on the email or the piece of paper or the report, but you don't see the simplest form. You don't see just what goes into building that piece of paper, let alone all the work to make those numbers. And early on, that was a big challenge of wanting to do things super fast and just having to realize that it's not that nobody else wants to go quickly. It's just that these things just take a bit more time, even if you're doing as fast as possible, which you also then start to learn that doing everything fast is not always going to be the right approach. Now, on the investment side, right, like we have a thesis, we have a timeline. There, speed is a huge, call it KPI. Are we on track? And when you get here, we still measure ourselves by time. Not everyone is motivated or incentivized by time. Some people really want to do things thoughtfully, do it right. And so one of the other challenges, Ricky, that I've faced, and it's been being a leader, you have to be a little bit more consensus building. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful in getting alignment because these cross-functional team impact. Our business is north of around 175 employees globally. So just figuring out time zones and all that stuff. I call them rewarding challenges, but it's definitely been tough.
You touched on just before about the cross-functional priorities and different needs. So as a chief of staff, how do you balance those needs across different functions? What's been the biggest learning there for you?
It's another great question because so early on, just for context on my journey, the company itself is going through a big transformation. And I would say not the conventional way to do it. Jason, our new CEO, he actually joined 4 weeks after I started. Now, I had interviewed with him. I knew him. I knew he was going to be joining. We really hit it off. But going back to priority alignment, I spent a lot of time with him making sure that he and I are aligned on what's most important. I think then as we go out from those meetings, which are daily for us, just daily quick check-ins, I'm probably handling more of the tactical stuff. I also step into a lot of interim roles when needed. So that's been another fantastic challenge for me. When I first came over, we didn't have anyone to lead IT and HR. So I took that on. At the moment, as we're recording this, and Ricky, I'd love to pick your brain. I'm taking over account management while we look for a new leader. So that's been a full ramp up.
Nice.
It's been a lot of fun. That is the priority, right? Now, the other thing that I'd add is we've added and we have an awesome now full C-suite. So a big part of my job is also making sure that they understand the priorities and that they're also the right ones. So there's competing priorities all the time, things that are department specific, company specific, board specific, M&A, right? Are we prioritizing our time most effectively? And so that's now become a big piece of it. Sometimes I'm cracking the whip. Other times I'm trying to hold a shield in front of them. But it all starts again with, I believe, fast, rapid communication, like the daily check-in. It's like my favorite meeting, 15 minutes, 8 of us. If it takes 10 minutes, it's gone very long, but we all leave that meeting knowing what's up today. What did I forget? What might be missing? What priority changed? So that's been a huge help.
Back in the day, I ran daily meetings for our C-suite. I've always been a huge fan of them. I think alignment is still the most powerful thing in companies, right? If you can get everyone going in the same direction and people are passionate about what they're doing and driving forward, then success follows. And
That's right.
You know, daily check-ins is a super powerful way to make sure your team, especially as you globalize, right? You
That's
can't
right.
handshake every day. That gives you that social interaction that you need.
You just hit on something else, just the way you said it, that also rings true. And it's been a learning for me. I think coming from the PE side, right? Everyone you're working with is a super, let's call it like high achiever. They're very driven. They put in the hours. And that's not to say people at Panopto are not that, but I think high achievement and motivation looks in a lot of different ways. And when you can get people aligned and motivated, you can also then just get out of the way and let the work get done and get done better than you could do it. And that was a learning because coming from the investment side, it's like everyone does a lot, and they all hold themselves to wanting to get all this done. And so realizing you can scale yourself more by letting others actually go out and do the things that they were hired to do. It took me a little longer than I wish it did to figure that out, but now it's making things a lot better for me.
Being the CEO is the best, right? You're just hiring people and letting them be good at what they're good at.
That's right. Get smarter people than you. That's it.
100%. That's all I ever did. Just delving back a little bit, chief of staff isn't the most common title that you'd see, especially in smaller companies. So do you want to give a bit of background as to what a chief of staff is doing? Because I guess a lot of the companies that, that we're talking to in particular in that space, they really haven't even begun C-suite build out yet, right? They're founder-led, founder-driven. They might have one person sitting alongside them, but they're about to go on that journey that you've helped reformulate at Panapto.
Yeah, for sure. Any smaller, and you would probably question, is the chief of staff necessary here? I think why it's worked out here, and let me answer first, actually, just it's a nebulous title, just by definition, right? The president has a chief of staff, and you go to Google and every exec has a chief of staff. And for me here, I really bucket it into two things. Going back to can I almost be the clone of the CEO? It's actually funny enough, he's in the Southern Hemisphere right now traveling. So if he and I are aligned, I can run every tactical meeting. I can run every daily stand-up. I can join. I can make calls on approvals and stuff like that because we are so joined at the hip. And in Panopto's case, having offices all over Asia Pacific, London, US, he's on the road a lot. And that gives him more legs to run himself. The other aspect goes to being able to help keep this company exec team organized, as I said before. When you're working with investors, private equity investors especially, you're not only running the business, we do have to interact with our board and we have to make sure that we are aligned. We have deliverables. Every quarter we have board meetings. K1 is awesome. And the fact their operations team works with us on special projects. I'm there though to help make sure that those are scoped appropriately and we're all know what we're working on and it's not derailing something else. At this size for this company, I think if you also have this global in-person presence, having my role coupled with the CEO adds a ton of value. The other thing
100%.
And then the other one I'd share is I think when I look at like my background, I tell some people it's like I'm a bit of a Swiss Army knife, right? Like part of my goal down this path is to get really specialized on one or two specific functions. But coming into a company, going through transformation, going through change, kind of having utility players who you can drop in and keep things going, I think that's also been massively valuable for the company.
It gives you acceleration, right? Because sometimes the hardest thing about scaling is finding the right people to scale.
That's right.
So having a Swiss Army knife that can go, well, we're going to scale account management like you're about to do. Ian's going to take it and drive it. And as you're scaling and as you're building, you can take your time then to find the right leader to come in and support that rather than taking a leader because you need to scale it.
And as you guys know better than most, the right people can make things way easier and making the wrong hire because you're trying to go fast.
Yeah, 100%. Did it multiple times, 100%. People drive businesses. And if you make the wrong decision, and no one does it for bad reasons, you do it because you're trying to accelerate, you're trying to go fast. And everyone sells themselves. We always talk about that. People sell themselves beautifully in an interview, but having a Swiss Army knife is super powerful work for a business.
Yeah. And I do really enjoy it, that aspect of it. Sometimes I have to remind myself, you are trying to get specialized in a couple things. You don't just constantly be the utility player forever.
Yeah. Ian, just want to circle back. So you talked about you have a shared vision. You type with CEO. You've got a leadership team that's really coming along and you're on the same journey. What happens after that? You've got all the right people in the right seat. What do you think of next? Like, how do you think of metrics in a business and how do you drive that accountability? What's been your involvement in that phase?
Yeah. It's super important, right? Like, how do you build that drumbeat? Let's go back to talking about the daily stand-ups. So this is something that more recently we've rolled out company-wide. And I'm going to get to the metrics part, but one of the things that was one of the early challenges coming into the company, especially being global, is the amount of time it took to disseminate communication. And Panopto software, by the way, is lecture. It's mostly used by higher education. It's lecture capture and recording. So asynchronous communication, it's easy. But if you want to talk about something related to employees' compensation or performance management, right? Something that really deserves a live message. For a long time, I was like, the only way to do this was to call a meeting. And employees, as we all know, don't get warm and fuzzy feelings inside when a meeting from the CEO shows up on the calendar, even if it might be good news. And one of the things I always loved about the daily stand-ups was I can just share a quick message. Hey, so-and-so is going on to a new company. We're excited for them. Hey, we're hiring 3 new people and they're all going to start next Monday. So that's one of the things that I've been very involved in along with our SVP of operations is building this from rally cry defining objectives to monthly business reviews, to weekly tacticals, to daily stand-ups. And it sounds like meeting overload, but it actually clears out a ton of meetings because we just do those and then you can go and focus on what you're doing. Now, on the KPIs, Ricky, every Monday we pull up an executive dashboard that all the execs have access to. And it is the core metrics for finance and accounting, right? It's your AR, it's your EBITDA, it's your OPEX, your gross margin. Then we go down and look at our bookings. Then we look at our churn and downsell. Then we're getting down to employee retention, right? NPS, CSAT. And we're actually still trying to add in more to this. To be clear, we do not look at every metric in the meeting. What we hold the team accountable is before this meeting, you need to go look at it. And if there's something you want to dig into, because everyone, when you join our weekly tactical, you put your CEO hat on. You take off your CRO or your CMO or whatever you are, and we're all in this together. So if we want to drive into a metric, what do we do? Or what are we going to talk about? Similar town halls. So we do them monthly. I know for some that sounds a little overkill. Meetings don't never take a full hour, but it's a drumbeat on the business. So we shared the whole company, the kind of key high level metrics. We talk about the deals that were won. And then there's a living dashboard in our internet that shows them. So we try to, we use that word like transparent, right? And transparent means a different thing to everybody, but we don't want to hide anything as it relates to the key metrics of the business. And culturally at Panopto, it's something that they're accustomed to seeing. And again, it's, hey, our bonus is tied to this. This is what adds value to the company. This is what your goals should be tied to. So this is what we're talking about.
You touched on about transparency. Again, it varies, right? Everyone's got a different definition. But as an organization, can you perhaps be too transparent sometimes?
Totally. We have certainly stubbed our toe trying to be transparent. And I think where we learned our lessons, let's call it, is communicating information when it's not fully baked. Because the intention was positive. Hey, something's going to change. We want to let you know about it. But it's an impactful change. Let's say you're changing the way performance management is going to be measured and handled. We didn't have the fully baked plan of exactly how it's going to change. We created more distraction than positive takeaway from that by trying to be transparent of, a decision was made. In hindsight, we should have waited until we were done and ready to roll out and train managers and the whole thing. And then similarly on the metrics, we're of course mindful of what we talk about and how we talk about it. Interest rates have been going up. A lot of privately owned companies usually have debt. Like we don't talk about our debt, cash payment. Now we get asked and those conversations go to the CFO and it's usually just hey, the company is healthy, we're fine. And that's where it lives. So you absolutely can do too much. But for us, our biggest hindsight has been, and we've done it a couple of times, is don't communicate for the sake of communicating if you don't have the full message or the full change kind of baked, especially when you're going through change, right? Like when companies are going through change, you're on pins and needles. Everything comes through like a not rosy colored glasses. It's whatever the opposite would be.
Everything's bad, right? And the thing is, what I will say, we've done it a million times, and I'll probably will keep doing it for the rest of my career. The thing about transparency and honesty is if you are doing that, even though you will make mistakes, you're making them effectively from a place of honesty and transparency. Right. It's a lot easier for your staff to eat that. It's not fully baked. You're figuring out, I'm a bit uncomfortable, but at least you knew. Because the other side to that is, once you make a decision, if it takes you 6 months to work out all the rest and train managers, everyone knows.
Yeah.
But they didn't hear it from you. They heard it from someone who did training, who was like, who saw this much of your decision and went to the rest of the stuff and went, hey, they're doing this. And then you got a group of people who are like, I hate that. And then when you finally pitch it 6 months later, you're like, we're doing this. Everyone's like, I'm only focusing on this because that's what I've heard already. And that's where I'm beating my drum beat now to that. Totally. And so it is a catch-22 where you're like, oh, if I don't tell people. And so we got to the point where I was like, we're making a decision. We have work to do. I'm telling you, because you're going to hear about it, that we're going to be looking down this path. When I finish the work, we will come back out and we'll give everyone their piece and we'll give you time to communicate to us about what you agree and don't agree on as part of that process. but it is a work in progress. And I was just honest about it because I tried both ways and I got burnt both sides. It didn't make a difference which way I went.
You bring up a really important point, which is to make a decision. That was the takeaway from the first few. Oh man, everyone's freaking out because we weren't fully baked with this. All right, let's take too long. Everyone's asking because they already know something's coming. And a similar point of just, hey, I'm telling you this. It's not all done, but exactly like this is what's going to be happening. And people might still be unhappy about it. But there's always a few who do come up, usually privately. I'm always like, why can't you speak up in the town hall? Who are like, hey, thanks for letting me know. Thanks for sharing this. Or, hey, I know most people are unhappy about this change. I'm actually excited about it. And that's also good, I think, reinforcement for any leader is that squeaky wheel is loud, but not everybody is unhappy with these changes, right? There's other people in the org. Because keep in mind, like, why are you doing this? Like, it's for the benefit of the business. It's really why you should be making these changes. And so you got to trust there's people in the business who are going to see that and get it. And there's also some people who you should just never make happy. And in my opinion, it's not your job to go cater to that. It's just more something you have to manage.
It's always that outlier of culture, right? Like building culture is super important. Get everyone to walk in the same set is super important. And if you have 90% of people walking in the same set, you're fine. The other 10%, you're never going to make them happy. It's impossible and you're not going to. And some of them are going to drop off and other people will come in. They will drop off and come in. That's the health of a business as you ride that wave.
100%. You nailed it.
I was going to come back to the company, and obviously it sounds like a lot of good things are happening, a lot of good changes. You're moving in the right direction. What are you most excited about for the next phase of Panapto? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah. What I am most excited about is that we've reset the foundation to go into our next stage of growth. It's going to be inorganic and organic, right? And one of the things here is there's been a lot of talk for a while of doing inorganic, really since K1 invested. And for a number of different reasons, it hasn't happened, right? Early on, the focus was just on organic growth. This was a business that benefited from COVID. And so there's a big tailwind to ride there. And then market started doing crazy stuff in 2021 and we're not going to buy because it's overpriced. And then markets have just kind of locked up and everyone thinks everyone else's assets are overpriced, but theirs are perfect.
Yeah.
Like a house.
That's right. So we're just hurry up and wait, but we haven't been idle while we've been waiting. So we've been doing some of the projects that are easy to kick down the can down the road because they're hard. And I'm talking about the full business systems reset, really tearing down your Salesforce instance that's been growing and amassing for the last decade, taking it down to the studs and just remapping process and rebuilding it in a way that can now scale into the next chapter to double, triple in size. And honestly, one of the biggest hamstrings for a privately held business is if you don't have good data, your workload is just going to increase because if we're all just candid here, like there's a drumbeat of reporting that's important, both for the business, also for external parties outside. And if it takes time to get that and get it accurate and clean, it's just more work. And that's one benefit of this. But more importantly, we're going to be able to make more strategic decisions faster by doing something like this. And the other thing that I get really excited about is this company was built and founded by a technologist, brilliant guy. But after he left, like we haven't had a kind of really cohesive, fully functioning technology product team. And we now have leaders in both. And I'm really excited for everyone, right? And I'm sure you're talking to so many AI companies, right? But we're not going down the path of pitching like we're going to change higher education with AI, but like their AI can apply to what Panopto does in some very meaningful ways that aren't like, again, we're changing how you are going to be educated, but it's like we can drive outcomes using AI. And so I think those are two of the things that I get most excited about. It's going to add value to our customers. And then also Panopto ourselves are set up for the next 18 to 24 months.
When I think AI, and we are spending lots of time in that space because everyone is, but that's the stuff that's interesting. It's where you're adding real value to a customer, right? That's going to have a meaningful impact in what they are doing or what you're delivering or how they're going to receive it. So there's actual outcomes in that. We get the pictures like everyone else of this is going to transform this. And that's great. But there's a huge journey to get to that point. What I'm looking at is those things that can have real immediate impacts for customer journey. So someone tangibly gets something that makes their life better.
That's right.
Within your software.
Yeah, that's right. And at the end of the day, thinking about our industry, higher education are not the alpha consumer fast adopter, right? Like it's a little monolithic. And so if you show up there, this is going to replace everything. They're going to be like, I don't want to talk to you now. But what we're talking about is something that is as simple as we capture video, it archives. Students can go back and search it. They can look at text. But what if all of a sudden now AI can scan the text and just give you a pop quiz? And based on what you miss, it could then just pass you back to, hey, you missed all your geometry questions.
Yeah.
Like,
Here's that part of the lecture. You can rewatch it. This is
100%. And it's low hanging fruit. Objectively, it's not feeling like you're just getting just barraged with marketing, and it's totally doable. I'm really excited just about that. I think it's
nice. Make the difference. I think those companies that will emerge as the winners as we go through this transition.
Yep.
Hey, coming back to what you said at top of the call about account management. So you're obviously looking at expanding that. So as a leadership team, how are you now looking at new customer acquisition versus expansion? Has there been a shift in focus, and how much so over the last couple of months?
Yeah, no,
perhaps
it's
a couple of years.
Yeah, no, it's actually a great question. As I mentioned, COVID was a tailwind for this business, right? If you were a university and you didn't have lecture capture, video capture, and archive, you definitely did by 2021, or else you were either breaking a law or you were no longer a university because people shouldn't be there. And at that point, new customer acquisition was certainly the focus. When we look at the business now, new acquisition continues to be incredibly important, but this is now more from a competitive point of view, right? It's red ocean, hand-to-hand combat. But the other fascinating thing, and no surprise to you guys, of why did K1 invest, one of the main reasons is incredibly high retention. This is a sticky business. That's a good thing, but also then makes new business acquisition from your competitors more challenging too, because it is all sticky. So there's definitely been more focus on never letting that gross retention number get lower and continuing to just increase wallet share in the business. We spend a lot of strategic time talking not only of how to expand ourselves within the school, but also now like, how do we bring the same value to other just parts of the, I'm going to use the word university. So like admissions or alumni or all these other sports, athletics, there's value to unlock there for us. And so that's a huge part of it, because like any product, right? The more dispersed we get across the organization, just the stickier and stickier it gets. I think also, Ricky, as the economy is constricted a bit, protecting the base is priority number one. You have a new business target. You want to go get new business. We're trying to expand learning use cases into the enterprise world where it makes sense. There's definitely a no education customer should ever be churning type of belief.
On the surface, everything looks good, right? It's easy. I hate the word, but everyone uses it, pivot. But what have you found as you peel back the layers? Like, how have you managed to shift that focus? Did it require compensation changes, role changes? What actually was involved in making the shift as an organization to be more customer centric?
It's honestly everything. Also, there's been some cultural changes we've had to go through. And one of the things I mean by that is historically, there's part of the culture was keep the customer happy. And actually, one of the things I'm super proud of at this business is we have world-class support. It's something that customers, when you look at the differentiators, our support compared to our competitors, it's just better. It's far more superior. I think our support team, they really care. This is a mission-built company of enabling education through video, and that just rings true and continues to live. And the mission is true. They built a culture where employees come because they want to be a part of that. So that alone helps a lot. But getting back down to what you said, everything looks good on the surface. Part of keeping customers happy means candidly like folding on API conversations, not pushing an upsell, maybe even giving a discount. Just like as soon as you hear the first sense of a little disgruntlement, oh, sorry, just pretend I didn't say it, and here you go. And so there's had to just been a little bit of a philosophy shift. Now, compensation plans have changed, adding more variable. Also, because one of the things early on, CSMs and now account managers, they weren't incentivized. They got a commission, but it wasn't variable commission. It was just cherry on top if you got this. Obviously, now if you add a variable component and say, hey, I'm incentivizing you to go get multi-year renewals right now because I want that AR locked up for 3 years, that changes the approach strategically, how you think about your customers, how you interact with them. And so we have been going through that insert business word pivot here in real time over the last 9 to 10 months. And it hasn't all been easy. Also, it does work. It doesn't work 100% of the time. Like some APIs that we couldn't get, it was actually a real good reason, but you also see account managers getting wins. And that's always light bulb moments for them too. It's like, oh, I can actually earn more money. That wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be type of thing.
Top advice.
If you just say, hey, you got to go do this, and you don't really explain to them or give any support or enablement, you're just cutting my compensation. But if you give them the tools to be successful, I'm assuming for yourself as a sales leader, right? Like you just have to get out of the way at that point and they will just go do it. Yeah.
And talk about showing them the way. You made this transition from investor into an operator seamlessly, from what I can gather. Any tips or advice to people who are actually looking at making that jump themselves?
My top advice, and it's coming really directly from me, is I'm certainly a problem solver. I joke with some people at times, you're in a big group, something's wrong, and I'll tell them later, I'm like, I'm going to throw out a lot of ideas. I don't actually think they're good, but if no one's talking, hopefully someone will just come up with something better because I threw it out. Now, I only give this context because I would say to anyone coming in, just give yourself the time to learn. Don't come in and feel like you immediately have to fix things because houses are on fire. You might end up making them a little bit worse than they actually had you just spend a little bit more time to learn. And I think in some cases I helped very quickly. In other cases, I probably added more confusion in the short term. In hindsight, if I could redo all of it, I would also come in with the just mental, also like context of good things have been happening here. That's how this company got to where it is today. Like, it's not all bad. Like it's not all broken. Just because it's going through a transformation and things are off the rails, it doesn't mean that the whole car is disassembled and nothing works. And that took me a little bit longer than I wish it did to really embrace. So that would be mine is take the time to learn. Don't assume it's all bad, and you'll find your spots pretty quick to add value.
That's powerful advice. Look, you've come from private equity side, you're inside now as an operator. But as you think about the future, the next 3 years, where do you get the sense that the tech world is shaping out to? Is it going to be a back to high growth world? Are we going to be a more balanced group of humans that look at business more holistically? Is it going to go, oh my God, it's all about defend the base and who cares? Like, where are you seeing the next couple of years? This is obviously a total guess.
No, I know. It's a great question. Here's how I see it. If you go back and think about 2020, it wasn't that the companies were so good. It was just that debt was so cheap, right? And so if you think about on a private equity side, it's probably like taboo words, but in the financial engineering, but it's the same way that like stock traders use arbitrage, right? And all this stuff. Like a smart person can engineer value. And so when I think about it with AI and all these things, like we're getting really good at making companies efficient and we're getting really good at building good tech. Actually, the gains, like the real value gains are going to get more and more marginal. And it's funny, right? Because we're adding an AI and all this, but we can read an income statement. We know where to cut a little here and do this. But I actually go back to, especially in the tech world, Ricky or Sean, I forget who said it, but it's like human capital is still, I think, the companies that can really harness it in the most efficient way are going to be the ones that get huge exits. Everything else is going to be very highly scrutinized. You're going to get some money. You're going to get a little exit here and there. But I mean, I'd be hard pressed to see 2021 coming back anytime soon. So many people over the next 2 to 3 years are going to get burned on not being able to get their money back for what they paid for something in 2021 because they didn't know what they were getting. This is funny, but think back to early COVID days. In the first week or two, people didn't need more toilet paper, but they still went to the grocery store when they heard it was there. Even in 2020, people were like, I need to buy a company because everyone else is doing it. And I think a lot of people are going to be learning that lesson the hard way for the next decade or
and
so.
The difficulty is that trickles down, right? Because when you learn that lesson, you then take that lesson out on everyone else as they're building their good company and going, okay, you might be worth 5x, but I'm only going to give you 3 because that's where I sit now because I need to recover what I've already lost. And there is a tailwind that is coming. And like you said, the people that are going to have success are the ones that can harness that human capital and have really strong understanding of their business, their model and their metrics, surrounded by the fact that they've got the right people walking in the right lockstep.
Yeah, 100%. The last thing I'll actually add to it, and you guys, I'm sure you're seeing this and you're thinking about it a lot, is I think the entrepreneur, the founder, the CEO, right? I think that there's going to be a lot of power shifting back to their hands because for 2 reasons. A, just people are getting smarter. Like they know how to go out and be bootstrapped longer. They know how to find alternative sources of capital, but also the competition in the private equity world has increased. I'm not talking about the big Blackstones. There's so many mid-market funds out there that have a different pitch in that. And even in the software world alone, like I think when I started in 2015, I could count on two hands, like who all the players were that you were going to see at any big B2B deal. Nowadays, there's a list of over 100, right? And that's a different type of competition. If I'm a CEO, an entrepreneur, I'd love to have the power of choice in that situation.
And it's putting some pressure back on us to actually stand out and be different. It's no longer the same. Everyone has the same term sheet that goes out and says, I will give you X, right? Now you've actually got to prove value. What will you bring to the table that separates? And that's something that K1 did really well early before this became a thing. You guys put time and effort into that building relationship early on and doing some of that stuff to differentiate from the market, which I think will set the K1 boys in good stead.
I think so too. But think about where you're at, right? And what we talked about is how do you differentiate yourself, right? Like it's going to be human capital. And so what's your differentiator, right? It's you guys have rode that wave. You've been in that car. And to me, it's somebody who you can empathize with me when I'm going through this pain versus someone who can't. It's all about trust.
Like our differentiator is that we're going to come on the ride with you and we've done it and been there. So we're probably more aligned to your side than the side that we're actually supposed to be on right now. We'll probably get lots wrong on the private equity side because it's not our background. It's not what we do. But we're good operators and I live that world and I'm still going to live that world. And that's our differentiator, but it won't be for everyone. And we're being super choosy in a tough market right now where, like I said, there's a lot of capital out there still. But there's still enough fear out it that everyone's just got their hands on their guns and they're just standing at 10 paces from each other and staring at each other.
That's exactly right. It's a weird time out there right now.
That's when you have the most fun in business. It's weird. And you can get out there and have a little bit of fun and make some things happen.
Hey, Ian, we're going to move to quick fire round, man.
This is the whole point of the actual podcast. We get to it at the very end, but this is the bit that matters.
Exactly. I was trying to think about this. They're good questions.
I'm sure you got it. Favorite movie?
Currently, my favorite movie is Whiplash.
Okay.
Oh.
I love that movie. I love the story. I also like jazz music, and it's just like the best. I just love how it ends. He finally just says, screw it, and just gets over all his insecurities and just crushes it. So it's a good one.
6 months, I'm going to ask you the same question once your little one's a bit older.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a picture movie or something.
Yeah.
You still get to watch adult movies? What? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I do love The Incredibles, so I hope he likes that one. If I have to watch one, that would be it.
The way that you make that happen is you put it on a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You will
force him to watch it. Yeah.
My kids will watch Star Wars. It's not their choice.
Man, my kid will definitely watch Star Wars. My wife and I differ on this, and he has to understand. Yeah, he's got to see it.
He could say, I am your father before he could say, I am your father. Trust me. Like it was.
Yeah. Nice one.
That's awesome.
What about favorite drink?
Favorite drink. So in the summertime, I really like a gin gimlet. But if I really had to pick one thing I'm drinking, forever, it's going to be bourbon or red wine. I grew up in Southern California. I'm pretty spoiled with the Napa cabs.
Yeah.
Australia has got some good stuff down there, and New Zealand. You put a Napa cab in front of me, I'll do a lot of things for you.
Favorite place to visit?
Man, that's another great question. There's two places I love to be. Now, one doesn't really count as visiting, but I'm a big sailor. So just being offshore on the ocean is just a wonderful place.
That counts.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that counts. The other place that I love going is, my wife and I always really like it, is Del Mar, San Diego. Sleepy little beach town. There's hundreds of them. That one's just ours. We just go down a lot when we lived on the west side. Always
I like San Diego too. It's the one place in the US I could have lived in.
Would sailing be your favorite activity then?
Sailing, I guess, would be. Now, I unfortunately haven't been able to do it much the last few years. Like before, like age 5 to, I don't know, COVID, like every summer. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to sail pro. Like I raced against.
What were you racing? Lasers?
Opti, laser, custom 80-foot offshore racers and everything in between.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sailed on the U.S. junior national team. I went to college to sail. It's a bit of an almost identity crisis, like the fact that I haven't really sailed. You guys might have picked up an outdoor guy. So if we had done this a year ago, I would have told you actually triathlon was my current favorite.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Getting into that. Yeah. And the other thing, here's some advice also. If you're like a chief of staff in a company going through a lot of transformation, you need to make time for yourself. And offshore sailing, backpacking, biking for 5 hours are fantastic ways to make time for yourself.
That's good advice for everyone. I found any executive, it's probably the hardest thing to do because you're busy and you have lots of stuff on and you feel like you should be doing those things. You should be driving yourself to complete those things. But
But if you don't make time for yourself, man, it's just, whoa, it gets tough.
You're not the best version of yourself. And if you're not the best version of yourself, you're not going to provide the best output in your business.
It all depends on the response to the next question, the main question.
Yeah, this is the only one that matters, to be honest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whether you're a good person or not such a good person.
And I guess I don't get to talk about what I'm doing with it.
No,
100%. No,
Is it going to sandwich or is it going in my oatmeal?
no,
that is not
don't
what you were
do that.
thinking when you said that, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's a good save, right?
100% a good save.
So what is going to be? Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. Crunchy or smooth?
Crunchy or smooth?
It would be crunchy for me.
Yes.
Oh,
Good call.
Same
Very
one.
good call.
same answer.
If you hadn't given me the power of choice, oatmeal is smooth, Ricky. But if it's stuck on an island.
Yeah, it is. This is 100% a stuck in island question. You only have one jar, so you'd have to have your oatmeal crunchy.
This has been fun, man. Thank you for coming on.
A lot of fun.